There are some mornings when the world feels heavier than the sky itself, when even breathing feels like lifting a mountain and the air tastes like exhaustion. For Ethan McKenzie, that was every day. He was a single father in Cedar Falls, a quiet town where time moved slow and bills piled fast. His wife Sarah had passed away 4 years earlier, and since then life had been an uphill battle. He fought with worn-out hands and borrowed strength. He worked long hours as a carpenter, taking every odd job he could find, fixing fences, building tables, repairing porches, anything to keep the lights on and food on the table for his 12-year-old daughter. Emma, she was his heartbeat, his anchor, his reminder that love could still live in broken places. Every morning he'd smile at her, pretending everything was fine, even when his stomach twisted at the sight of another overdue notice. The truck barely ran, the bank account hovered near empty, and his tools were more rust than steel. Still, when Emma laughed for a second, the world didn't feel so cruel. That afternoon, desperate to clear his mind, Ethan took a drive to the forest beyond Cedar Falls, a place that had been his quiet escape since childhood. The woods didn't ask him to be strong, they just let him be. He parked his truck, stepped into the hush of pine and soil, and breathed for the first time that day. The forest was a kind of mercy, steady, ancient, unbothered by human struggles. But fate, as it often does, had its own plans. What started as a walk to forget would become the moment everything changed. Because hidden somewhere between those trees was a stranger, a woman whose fall, both literal and emotional, would collide with his in ways neither could imagine. It began with a sound that didn't belong, a sharp, frustrated voice echoing through the trees, followed by the kind of curse words that made Ethan stop mid-step. He looked around, confused, until he heard it again, then a thud, then silence. Instinct kicked in. He ran toward the noise and froze at what he saw. Hanging upside down from a thick oak branch, her coat caught in the tangle of bark, was a woman, elegant, furious, and completely out of place. Her high heels dangled from a branch above her, her hair a golden mess of chaos. "Well," she snapped, "are you planning to help or just enjoy the view?" Ethan blinked, half concerned, half bewildered. After a few awkward moments, he climbed up and untangled her from the branches, lowering her safely to the ground. She brushed herself off with what remained of her dignity, muttering something about idiots and team building. When he asked what she was doing out there, she said it was part of a company retreat. Apparently, my team decided the best way to build trust was to leave their boss hanging, literally. Her tone dripped sarcasm, but behind it was something else. Weariness. "Name's Veronica Vale," she added quickly. It meant nothing to Ethan, but the world outside those woods knew her as the CEO of Vale Technologies, a woman worth millions. Out there she commanded empires. In here, she couldn't even find her shoe. When she twisted her ankle trying to walk, Ethan offered his arm without thinking. She hesitated, pride warring with practicality, but took it anyway. Together, they started down the trail, a broke single dad and a billionaire CEO, wandering lost through the same woods, both unaware that the person beside them was about to become their mirror. The forest was deeper than it looked. What should have been a 2-hour walk stretched into 4. Veronica limped, frustrated, her expensive blouse torn, her patience wearing thin. "You're sure this is the right way?" she asked for the 5th time. "Pretty sure," Ethan said, glancing around. "That's not comforting," she muttered. Her phone had no signal, the compass app was useless, and her assistant's number might as well have been a dream. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she was helpless, and it terrified her. Ethan saw the panic she tried to hide. She wasn't built for vulnerability. She was built for victory. But the woods didn't care who she was. Out here, her power meant nothing. He found a fallen branch and handed it to her. "Walking stick," he said simply. She looked at it, then at him, and for a moment the edge in her voice softened. "Thanks," she whispered. When the sun began to fade, they found a small clearing. He gathered wood, struck a match, and soon the fire crackled between them. The silence stretched, not awkward, just full. "So what do you do?" she asked, mostly to distract herself. "Carpentry," he said. "Build stuff, fix stuff. Try to keep life from falling apart. How's that going?" "Depends on the day." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. When she talked, it wasn't about business. It was about her mother, her childhood, the fear of failure that had driven her into becoming someone she barely recognized. "I thought if I climbed high enough, I'd stop being scared," she confessed. Ethan stared into the flames. "You just learned to hide it better." The forest wrapped around them, listening. And somewhere in that quiet, two strangers who'd spent years pretending to be fine began to remember what honesty felt like. By the time the stars appeared, something in the air had shifted. The fire glowed low, and Veronica's voice had grown soft, not sharp like before, but fragile, almost human. "I never tell anyone about my past," she said. "Why me?" he asked. She looked into the fire. "Because you're the first person who doesn't want anything from me." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't have to. The crackle of the fire filled the silence between them, like punctuation marks in an unspoken sentence. She asked about his life, and he told her. About Sarah's illness. About watching someone you love fade, piece by piece. About trying to stay strong for a child who keeps asking when Mommy's coming home. Her eyes glistened in the firelight, not out of pity, but understanding. She knew what it felt like to carry ghosts. "You know what's strange?" she whispered. "I spend my life surrounded by people, and I've never felt lonelier than I do at the top." Ethan looked at her, and for the first time saw not a CEO, not a stranger, but someone just as lost as he was. The night stretched on, heavy with the kind of connection that defies logic. When she finally leaned back and closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her, Ethan stared at her through the fading embers and realized something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't alone anymore. The dawn broke through the trees like a whisper, washing the clearing in pale gold. Veronica stirred, momentarily disoriented before the memories of the night returned. Ethan was crouched by the ashes, stirring warmth back into the world with quiet ease. "Coffee?" he asked, holding out a dented thermos. "It's awful, but it's hot." She smiled, still half asleep. "Awful's fine." They sat in silence, sipping, the calm of the woods wrapping around them like an old quilt. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of deadlines or the hum of city chaos. But peace never lasts long. By mid-morning, shouts echoed through the trees. A rescue team burst into the clearing, bright jackets flashing, radios crackling. "Miss Vale," they called. Cameras followed, reporters emerged, and suddenly the quiet was gone. Veronica's world, her real one, had found her. She stood smoothing her hair, her mask slipping back into place with practiced ease. Ethan watched her transform from human to headline. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." He nodded, unsure what to say. As she was led away through the trees, their eyes met one last time. It wasn't goodbye, it was something heavier. A silent understanding that something real had happened between them, and that maybe the hardest part of finding peace is realizing you can't take it with you. Days turned into weeks. But Ethan couldn't shake the memory of her, the woman who'd fallen out of the sky and into his silence. He went back to his life, fixing chairs, helping neighbors, pretending things were normal. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her sitting by the fire, her guard down, her laughter unfiltered. Then one evening, as he watched the news, her name flashed across the screen. Vale Technologies announces new expansion project in Cedar Falls. His heart sank. Her company was about to bulldoze everything he called home. He turned off the TV, staring into the dark. The same woman who told him she was tired of cages was now building one around his town. Anger burned where warmth had been, but across the city skyline, Veronica Vale was sitting in her office, reading the same proposal with a growing dread. She hadn't approved it, her board had. Yet her signature, printed and forged by protocol, sat on every page. And as she read the words Cedar Falls redevelopment, Ethan's name echoed in her head. Veronica Vale had made countless decisions in her career. Some profitable, some ruthless, but this one hit differently. She drove through the night to Cedar Falls, her car slicing through rain and regret. When she reached Ethan's workshop, he was outside, planing wood by hand. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face before hardening into something colder. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Your company's already done enough," she swallowed. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." "That's what people like you always say." "Then let me prove it," she said quietly, handing him an envelope. Inside was a signed cancellation order. "It's over, Ethan. I stopped it." He stared at her, disbelieving, but the paper in his hand was real. "You gave this up?" "For what?" "For peace," she said. "For the first good night's sleep I've had in years." The silence that followed wasn't anger anymore. It was shock. Redemption isn't loud, it's quiet, fragile, and terrifying. And in that moment, standing in the rain with ink-streaked papers between them, Ethan realized she wasn't trying to save him. She was trying to save herself. In the weeks that followed, Veronica Vale did what no one expected. She walked away from the empire she'd built. Her resignation shook headlines. Investors panicked, competitors celebrated. But she didn't care. She sold her penthouse, liquidated assets, and returned to Cedar Falls with something she hadn't had in decades: purpose. She met with families, listened to their stories, and offered her resources to rebuild the right way. Ethan tried to keep his distance, unsure what to make of the woman who could command millions, but now spent afternoons painting fences. But slowly her sincerity disarmed him. He watched her help local shop owners, sit in dusty diners, laugh with children, and it hit him. She wasn't playing savior. She was finally living. One evening, Emma said, "Dad, she's different." And Ethan, looking out the window where Veronica was helping an elderly man carry groceries, whispered, "Yeah, so am I." 6 months later, Cedar Falls was reborn. The old mill was now a community center, the vacant lots transformed into small homes designed by Ethan, funded by Veronica. Together, they built more than structures. They built belonging. She learned to swing a hammer, to get paint in her hair, to work until her hands ached. He learned to trust again, to smile without forcing it. Their days were filled with laughter and sawdust. Their nights with quiet dinners on the porch, where Emma's laughter filled the air like music. There was no fairy tale, no grand confession, just two souls slowly rebuilding not just a town, but each other. And as time went on, the line between us and them blurred until there was only we. One evening, under a sky painted in fading pinks, Ethan sat on his porch, watching Emma chase fireflies, while Veronica leaned against the railing beside him. "You ever think about how strange this is?" she asked. "Every day," he said. She smiled, soft and real. "You saved me in that forest." He shook his head. "Pretty sure you saved me too." The wind rustled the trees like distant applause. "I don't want to leave," she said quietly. He turned to her, eyes steady. "Then don't." She laughed, that same unguarded laugh from the night by the fire, and rested her head on his shoulder. For a man who had carried grief for so long, the peace felt almost foreign. But it was real. Emma ran up, holding a jar glowing with light. "Look, I caught one." Ethan smiled, glancing at Veronica. "Looks like we both did, kiddo." As the night deepened, he looked at the woman beside him and thought about fate. How it doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through the leaves, nudging two broken souls toward each other. "If you believe in second chances," he murmured to himself, "remember, sometimes the hardest rescue is saving yourself."